Alright, welcome back to my video on affirmative action and how the Supreme Court just dismantled it. So let's get right to the video. The Supreme Court on Thursday struck down affirmative action in college admissions, declaring race cannot be a factor and forcing institutions of higher education to look for new ways to achieve diverse student bodies. The court's conservative majority effectively overturned cases reaching back 45 years and invalidating admission plans at Harvard and the University of North Carolina, the nation's oldest private and public colleges, respectively. The decision, like last year's momentous abortion ruling that overturned Roe v. Wade, marked the realization of a long-sought conservative legal goal, this time finding the race-conscious admissions plans violate the Constitution and a law that applies to colleges that receive federal funding, as almost all do. Those schools will be forced to reshape their admissions practices, especially top schools that are more likely to consider the race of applicants. Chief Justice John Roberts said that for too long universities have concluded wrongly that the touchstone of an individual's identity is not challenges bested, skills built, or lessons learned, but the color of their skin. Our constitutional history does not tolerate that choice. No, you've got that backwards. It's that generally the color of your skin is a factor in the challenges that they've had to overcome and whatever skills they have or lessons learned. It is because of the color of their skin that they have these challenges, not that it supersedes all of that. And the fact that he doesn't see that, either he just doesn't want to see that, or he just doesn't actually give a shit about whether there's diversity and just is using that as an excuse. So, from the White House, President Joe Biden said he strongly disagreed with the court's ruling and urged colleges to seek other routes to diversity rather than let the ruling be the last word. Besides the conservative-liberal split, the fight over affirmative action showed the deep gulf between the three justices of color, each of whom wrote separately and vividly about race in America and where the decision might lead. Justice Clarence Thomas, the nation's second black justice, who had long called for an end to affirmative action, wrote that the decision sees the university's admission policies for what they are: rudderless, race-based preferences designed to ensure a particular racial mix in their entering classes. Okay, it is wanting a racial mix, yes. But rudderless? It's not like people are, going into, well, Clarence would probably think that, and other conservatives would probably think that colleges are going into the hood and just grabbing someone at random and saying, hey, how would you like to come and join our college? That is not how this works. These are people who are qualified. They just want to ensure that they aren't choosing the other guy just because they're white. I don't see the problem here. And seriously, we're going to listen to a guy who seems to think that, this rich conservative who donates to right-wing causes just so happens to befriend you for absolutely no reason other than he wants to be your friend. We're going to accept his judgment. He can't even figure out that people are using him because of his power. And we're supposed to believe that he understands how, well, anything works? Anyway. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, the court's first Latina, wrote in dissent that this decision rolls back decades of precedent and momentous progress. Both Thomas and Sotomayor, the two justices who have acknowledged affirmative action played a role in their admissions to college and law school, took the unusual step of reading summaries of their opinions aloud in the courtroom. So let me get this straight. Not only can we question Thomas's judgment because he thinks that a rich conservative just so happens to want to be his friend and give him lavish trips and help his great nephew and all of that, just simply out of the goodness of his heart, and has nothing to do with what Clarence could do for him. He also benefited from affirmative action, the very program he says is now illegal. I'm sorry, you didn't seem to have a problem when it helped you get you where you needed to go. Now, normally I don't like the hypocrisy argument simply because I've seen so often forced birthers claim that nobody should ever speak in favor of a woman's right to choose, because if you were aborted, actually no, the fact that you weren't aborted somehow shows some sort of hypocrisy. So, yeah, I try to stay away from the hypocrisy argument where I can, but come on. What is it with Republicans who seem to think that, oh, I got mine, fuck you? I just do not understand that. You would think that somebody who benefited from a program would understand that others should be able to benefit. What's with this? Yeah, I benefited, but you know what? I don't care. Nobody else should. I mean, this just makes no sense to me. It really, really doesn't. In a separate dissent, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, the court's first black female justice, called the decision truly a tragedy for all of us. Jackson, who sat out the Harvard case because she had been a member of an advisory governing board, wrote, with let them eat cake obliviousness, today the majority pulls the ripcord and announces colorblindness for all by legal fiat, but deeming race irrelevant in law does not make it so in life. Exactly. In a perfect world, race shouldn't matter. Absolutely, race shouldn't matter. It should just strictly be merit-based. However, if you have two candidates who are absolutely equal in everything, one happens to be black and one happens to be white, and you have a shit ton of white people at that college, what's wrong with going with a person's race? Like, okay, these two are equal. We have to use something to differentiate these two. Oh yeah, we don't have a lot of black people. Let's go with that one. At that point, I do not see the problem. I mean, it's not like they're making any value judgment about either candidate. They're just saying, what do we need more of in this school? So, all right. And just the fact that Jackson is willing to recuse herself, unlike other people on the court, when they should be recusing themselves, she didn't have a say in the deliberations because, well, not in the deliberations, but in the actual day-to-day of the case, because she actually has principles, and she understands that she has to recuse herself. So, yeah. The vote was 6-3 in the North Carolina case and 6-2 in the Harvard case. Justice Elena Kagan was the other dissenter. Well, yeah, because, 3 liberals. Hello. Biden, who quickly stepped before cameras at the White House, said of the nation's colleges, they should not abandon their commitment to ensure student bodies of diverse backgrounds and experiences that reflect all of America. He said colleges should evaluate adversity overcome by candidates. In fact, an applicant for admission still can write about, and colleges can consider, how race affected his or her life, be it through discrimination, inspiration, or otherwise, Roberts wrote. Now, that is something that was brought up by Ketanji Brown Jackson, that it's okay to have legacy applicants. Because let's face it, let's come up with an example of, George W. Bush. Do you really think he would have gotten into Yale if it wasn't for his father? The fact that he went there, the fact that he gives money to Yale, I'm pretty sure that had a lot to do, if not everything, to do with George W. Bush getting into Yale. Because based on what he did as president, he sure as hell wasn't smart enough. Now, how is that not affirmative action for rich people? I mean, seriously. The only reason someone's getting into a school is because of who their daddy is? Give me a break. But anyway, Ketanji Brown Jackson pointed out that, wait a minute, so they can write in their essay that they're a legacy applicant, but a black kid can't write about their experiences being black and their experiences with racism, which, yeah, why prevent others from giving their life experiences, but the rich kid can do theirs because they're just like, I don't know, name dropping, basically. So at least there is that carve out. So that at least helps a little. But still. And I'll admit, the quota system was not perfect. But it's hilarious that people are screaming that Ketanji Brown Jackson is an affirmative action hire, which, as if people who got into school because of affirmative action are actually just dumb shits. Case in point, the legacy candidates are more likely to be absolute dumb shits than affirmative action applicants, because these are still people who can qualify. They just have that extra ability to get in based on what this college needs more of as far as race is concerned. So they're not like lily white. And I would think that the same would be true for colleges that are specifically a minority. The only difference is that, white kids have the privilege of pretty much going anywhere if they have the grades. Whereas it's been shown that Black and Latino students do not. So, but in theory, yeah, I would think they could go that way too. But the institutions may not simply establish through application essays or other means the regime we hold unlawful today. Presidents of many... I do not understand that sentence. Because either you're taking life experiences into account, which, according to this ruling, they just look at the paper that says black and ignore the entirety of the application. Do they really think that's what's happening? That isn't happening. And if it is happening, then those schools need to knock it off, because that is not the point of affirmative action. Anyway, presidents of many colleges quickly issued statements affirming their commitment to diversity regardless of the court's decision. Many said they were still assessing the impact but would follow federal law. Harvard will continue to be a vibrant community whose members come from all walks of life all over the world, school president Lawrence Bacow said in a statement. President Reginald DeRoche of Rice University in Houston said he was greatly disappointed by the decision, but more resolute than ever to pursue diversity. The law may change, but Rice's commitment to diversity will not, he said in a campus message. Former Presidents Donald Trump and Barack Obama offered starkly different takes on the High Court ruling. There's a shock. The decision marked a great day for America. People with extraordinary ability and everything else necessary for success, including future greatness for our country, are finally being rewarded, Trump, the current Republican presidential frontrunner, wrote on his social media network. Why am I not surprised that Trump thinks that black people only get ahead because affirmative action, allows dumb shits to rule the world? I'm sorry, you're the dumb shit, and you know how you got ahead in life? Because of your daddy. You didn't have to work your ass off. So spare me that you think that black people are inherently dumber, and so now that affirmative action has been overturned, that somehow only intelligent people will get through. Again, you got into the schools you got into because of your daddy. George W. Bush got into Yale because of his daddy. These are not smart people. At least George W. Bush has some humanity in him, so I'll definitely put him above Trump. But still, they only got into these schools because of their parents, because of their fathers. And you are seriously telling me that you think that that affirmative action allowed dumb people? I'm sorry, have you met Dan Quayle? I heard that he got in because of affirmative action, which, what fucking minority is he except a dum-dum? So, I mean, granted, he did tell Mike Pence, don't be stupid and do something illegal just so Trump can be happy. So, again, this is how far Republicans have fallen. They just made Dan Quayle look like a genius. But again, what is with this black people are only succeeding because of affirmative action? If they are as dumb as you claim they are, then affirmative action wouldn't help them succeed because they would still be dumb shits. Racists drive me crazy. Well, all bigots drive me crazy, but Obama said in a statement that affirmative action allowed generations of students like Michelle and me to prove we belonged. Now it's up to all of us to give young people the opportunities they deserve and help students everywhere benefit from new perspectives. Yes. The Supreme Court had twice upheld race-conscious college admission programs in the past 20 years, including as recently as 2016. I wonder what the difference is. But that was before the 3 Trump appointees joined the court. At arguments in late October, all 6 conservative justices expressed doubts about the practice, which has been upheld under Supreme Court decisions reaching back to 1978. Lower courts also have upheld the programs at both UNC and Harvard, rejecting claims that the schools discriminated against white and Asian American applicants. Yes, if you think that this was brought up by a white dude, well, it was, but it was on behalf of, at least the Harvard case, Asian Americans, because they didn't get in. Yes, there are only a certain amount of slots, but how do you know it was affirmative action that kicked you out? It could have been the legacy applicants that kicked you out. How do you know which one it was? Or it was a combination. So why not go after legacy as well? Because that's taking away spots from people who probably deserve to go to Harvard. But nobody goes after them. It's, again, rich people are getting the pass because they're rich. What the hell? If you're truly going to whine about how you don't have a very good chance of getting into these schools, then go after legacy. It really is that simple, because I don't know how many slots they take up, but I'm pretty sure they take up a good amount of slots. As in, they don't have a set amount of slots, it's just whomever happens to be a legacy applicant gets in, simply because they're legacy. So I would think that they're more of a problem than affirmative action. So why don't I hear anybody going after them? Because this isn't about slots and being discriminated against. It's about hatred of black people. Because, seriously, if you're this smart, you know that legacy applicants exist. So this should not be hard. The college admissions disputes were among several high-profile cases focused on race in America, and were weighed by the conservative-dominated but mostly diverse court ever. Among the 9 justices are 4 women, 2 black people, and a Latina. Well, that certainly is proof that diversity doesn't always spell good. The justices earlier in June decided a voting rights case in favor of black voters in Alabama and rejected a race-based challenge to a Native American child protection law. Okay, for those who aren't aware, I think I actually did a video on the gerrymandered maps in Alabama and the fact that they have to go back to the drawing board and redraw the maps to allow for a second black district. So, and as far as the race-based challenge to Native American child protection law, Native American law says that only other Native Americans can adopt Native American children, which on the face of that sounds like blatant racism. However, if you look at the history and how that was used to try to destroy their culture, having white people adopt Native American children, you can see why that's a touchy subject. You should not, Native Americans want their culture to survive. So, and one of the ways to destroy that culture was to adopt children by white families, and so they no longer remember whichever nation they belong to. So yeah, and the Supreme Court did rule in favor of, I can't remember which nation it was who was involved in this. And so the Supreme Court did do a good thing in those 2 cases, which is bizarre that they are doing this to affirmative action. So, now, like I said, you can question how diverse, the quota system. I mean, there are things about affirmative action that you could question, especially if they do the quota system that we need this many percent. That obviously can bring problems. But looking at your incoming freshman list and looking at equal applicants, and one being from a group that isn't highly represented at the college and you could use more of, I do not see the problem with that. It's not like you're only going against an applicant for an applicant because of their race. You're taking everything into account. And oh, by the way, at the very end you take into account race. I see no problem with that. All right. The affirmative action cases were brought by conservative activist Edward Blum, who also was behind an earlier challenge against the University of Texas, as well as the case that led the court in 2013 to end use of a key provision of the landmark Voting Rights Act. Oh, yeah, you sound like a great guy. Blum formed Students for Fair Admissions, which filed the lawsuits against both schools in 2014. Yes, to the conservatives who seem to think that cases and what's the word I'm looking for? Cases that going in front of the court, cases being investigated, do not take the 1 hour that you watch on TV to get accomplished. That is not how these things work. The group argued that the Constitution forbids the use of race in college admissions and called for overturning earlier Supreme Court decisions that said otherwise. Okay. Actually, I hope that Thomas gave an opinion, because I really would love to know how he justifies the fact that he got where he is through affirmative action, but yet denying it for others. I would love to know his justification for that. Roberts' opinion effectively did so. Both Thomas and the dissenters wrote, "The only institution of higher education explicitly left out of the ruling were the nation's military academies," Roberts wrote, suggesting that national security interests could affect the legal analysis. Huh? I'm confused. So, are you seriously suggesting that the nation's military doesn't need fair admissions because, what, blacks are better fighters or something? Seriously, what does this mean? I mean, we have fair admissions or we don't. I do not understand that at all. Blum's group had contended that colleges and universities can use other race-neutral ways to assemble a diverse student body, including by focusing on socioeconomic status and eliminating the preference for children of alumni and major donors. Now, this is the first guy I have read who took into account not just affirmative action, but legacy. And so that one I agree with him on. First off, who the fuck says that socioeconomic status is not being considered? It's just that the reason most poor happen to be minorities is because of racism. I do not understand. It's not like they're choosing between two rich, that they're choosing between two people who are, that the white kid happens to be poor and the black kid happens to be rich. Oh, let's go with the rich one. That is not how this works. Unless they happen to be legacy candidates, but the chances of that happening at this moment are, there's probably some at this point, but yes, the legacy should be eliminated, because what the hell? Kids shouldn't get into college just because of who their parents are. That's how they get jobs. All right. The school said that they used race in a limited way, but that eliminating it as a factor altogether would make it much harder to achieve a student body that looks like America. Which is true. Actually, I'll hold that thought because they will discuss it in this article. At the 8 Ivy League universities, the number of non-white students increased from 27% in 2010 to 35% in 2021, according to federal data. Those men and women include Asian, Black, Hispanic, Native American, Pacific Islander, and biracial students. 9 states already prohibit any consideration of race in admissions to their public colleges and universities. The end of affirmative action in higher education in California, Michigan, Washington State, and elsewhere led to a steep drop in minority enrollment in those states' leading public universities. Now think about it for a second. These are the liberal states, and there was a steep decline. What the hell do you think is going to happen in the red states? The other states are Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Nebraska, New Hampshire, and Oklahoma. In 2020, California voters easily rejected a ballot measure to bring back affirmative action. A poll last month by the Associated Press NORC Center for Public Affairs Research showed 63% of U.S. adults say the court should allow colleges to consider race as part of the admissions process, yet few believe students' race should ultimately play a major role in decisions. A Pew Research Center survey released last week found that half of Americans disapprove of considerations of applicants' race, while a third approve. Now, again, how is this question phrased? Because, again, if you have 2 equal applicants, but the only difference is their race, then you're going to probably go with, if you want a diverse student body, you're probably going to go with the student that is otherwise underrepresented at the university. Again, that is entirely different than only considering race, which, like I said, I'm not aware of schools doing, and if they do, they sure as hell should have their asses hauled before the Supreme Court, because that is 100% wrong. The Chief Justice and Jackson received their undergraduate and law degrees from Harvard. 2 other justices, Neil Gorsuch and Kagan, went to law school there, and Kagan was the first woman to serve as the law school's dean. It doesn't say where Thomas went. I know at least he did his undergrad at Holy Cross. Every U.S. college and university that the justices attended, save one, urged the court to preserve race-conscious admissions. Those schools, Yale, Princeton, Columbia, Notre Dame, and Holy Cross, joined briefs in defense of Harvard's and UNC's admission plans. And I know that Thomas went to Holy Cross, so. Only Justice Amy Coney Barrett's undergraduate alma mater, Rhodes College in Memphis, Tennessee, was not involved in the cases. Oh, that's not surprising. Anyway, that is the end of that article. But, yeah, I really do hope that they come up with a way to mitigate the fact that affirmative action has been ruled unconstitutional, because absolutely race should be considered. Now, like I said, I do like that even though the conservative lawyer was just using these Asian Americans to basically show, see, I'm not a white supremacist dickhead. I'm representing Asians. So, I'm not a fan of that, but he is taking on legacy, which I am a fan of, because I fail to see why there should be room for legacy. If these kids are smart enough to get in on their own, and they just so happen to have parents who are donors or just went to that school, that's fine. That I don't consider legacy. But to only consider only consider legacy and not whether they actually have the academic requirements. That's doing what people seem to think affirmative action is doing, in that they only look at race. No. Legacy, however, that is exactly what they do. They just see that, Joe Schmo's parents donate to us, so let's not look further than that and let them in. No. So anyway, that is all I have for this article, and I will see you guys next time.